Welcome to GatherGeeks by BizBash. I'm David Adler, and before we start, I want to introduce you to one of our fantastic sponsors, Skipster. They are the guest management platform used by top event teams for everything from guest lists to seating charts and online invitations. If you're looking for the next generation event software that helps deliver the perfect guest experience, head over to Skipster's website. It's spelled ZKIPSTER.com to try a free event.
Are you a
9, 8,
okay, so we're gonna be at
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. Here we are, another GatherGeeks podcast.
And today we're welcoming back Rebecca Grinnals and Kathryn Arce, whose company, Engaging Concepts, produces the Engage Wedding Business Summits. The conferences, which are attended by luxury wedding planners, take place annually in the United States and in the Caribbean and Europe at beautiful destinations. You might think that's enough to guarantee a great first impression, but that's not necessarily the case.
No, they start way before the event even happens with gifting and with the events in terms of on the bus even. They really know how to engage because they came from Disney, so they have that Disney DNA. So they're happy-go-lucky. In fact, they live in Happy Town, USA, or whatever the name of it.
Celebration, Florida, aka Celebration, Florida.
Celebration, Florida, which is the story of their lives, really.
The question they tackle here is, how do you make people feel comfortable and welcome at your event? And that's not everyone's goal. You know, sometimes an event is trying to make you feel uncomfortable or be aware of a VIP area that's exclusive and not for you. But their goal at Engage is to make everyone from first timers to repeat attendees feel welcome. And they have specific strategies of how to achieve it. So David, tell me, what memories do you have from your first Engage?
Well, I didn't know anyone there. And the minute you walk in, you feel like you know everyone there. And I think that was the magic, because a lot of the things that they do to create sort of the activations put everyone on the same level. So you're sitting there watching something happen that you don't expect, and you're on the same level with everyone else who doesn't expect what's going on. So it's an equalizer in a sense.
We'll hear more about their strategic thinking about events and how they create those types of experiences, including how to encourage guests to participate in activities, how they promote networking, and why they register attendees by their first name and not their last.
It's also interesting that they are not, you'd think it's about weddings. It's a business event for business people. So it's a lot different than what people think it is.
Exactly. Well, let's take a listen.
So welcome, Kathryn and Rebecca. We're so happy to have you on our First Impression podcast. And I want to first address this to Kathryn, and then we'll go to Rebecca. But Kathryn, when we talk about the word first impression, the wedding business, it's very important to have that first impression for the guests that are coming in, for the brides and things like that. When you do these Engage conferences, what do you feel is the most important thing that people should feel and see and touch and smell as their first impression of coming into an Engage event?
Well, actually, I feel like their first impression from us goes all the way back to our website and the communication that we provide leading up to the event. So we try to have our website be informative, of course, but also bright and pretty, and to lead them through to answer all of the questions that they have. And then, of course, when they reach out to us, we want to get back to people as quickly as possible, and in a personal way. So when people email us and ask us questions, we try to turn around and answer them directly from the two of us. And it's interesting how many people will write back, or if they call and we answer the phone or call them back, will say to us, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you responded to me, or you called me, or I can't believe I'm talking to you. I thought I would just get an automatic response, or someone from your team would call back." So I think that personal connection is really important. And then when they get to the actual event, we think it's really important for eye contact. So
eye contact is one of your sort of secret sauce things?
I think so. We set up our registration bar, so to speak, so that when the attendee walks up, they're not looking down at someone sitting at a 6-foot table. They are eye to eye with someone from our team or even us. A lot of times we're out there, and they can say to them, "Hi, David, welcome," and you're on the same level, so you're interacting, and there's no it's not awkward. And they're also registering by their first name, not their last name. That's one of those tips we picked up from being Disney girls. Everything is on a first name basis. And we just want to welcome them and make them feel a part of the group immediately. So, to me, that's what's important, is that there's that instant communication right there, that we are on the same level.
Okay, so let's let Rebecca take it up from here. So you've actually had eye contact, you've called them by their first name, you're at the same level, you've got the experience from the website that makes them really want to go to this because they're seeing all these people that they can connect with, and they feel like they're entering a community. What happens next, Rebecca? What is your sense of a first impression? Because there's not really a first impression, there's many impressions, I assume.
Yes, and I think for us, building sort of on what Kathryn said, for us, engage, and obviously the name of what we do is all about engaging with other people and with information and all of that. And so, the word that kind of comes to mind that I think we try very hard to create is an atmosphere of warmth and making people feel comfortable. So I think, the best first impression you can make is making someone feel comfortable and welcome. And so there are a lot of different touch points in which we do that. And I think anyone who's been to an Engage, or certainly if you've met both of us, and again, as Kathryn mentioned, we come from Disney, so a lot of that is comes from how we were trained. But it is about being real and not about being really formal. We're there, and it's a family, it's a community, it's a welcome. So all of those moments, whether it's coming into a specific party or coming into the general session or arriving for registration or arriving at the gala, whatever it may be, we're really very aware and always planning and thinking about what does it feel like, what is the welcome, how warm do people feel, how comfortable do they feel, are there moments that could potentially be awkward or uncomfortable, and how can we solve to that?
And do you think that the welcome is underrated in terms of people appreciating it from the point of view of an organizer?
I think so. I think sometimes you go to a large conference or to a meeting or something, and a lot of people know each other, and it's sort of taken for granted that that you may be new, or that everyone knows each other and they're excited to see each other. And so there are a lot of moments where you have to step back and put yourself in the position of the person who's walking into the room, whether they're walking into the room and they've been many times, or whether they're walking into the room for the first time, and sort of think about and sort of have that empathy for how does it feel, because we've all been in situations where you do feel uncomfortable and you don't necessarily feel welcomed, or the welcome feels like an afterthought, like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize you don't know anybody, or things like that. And that one of the big elements that we do is our first-timer session. And Kath, you may want to speak a little bit to that,
Kathryn,
because Kathryn's always working and thinking about how are ways we can, switch this up. And we're always talking, and she's like, I have another idea for how we may be able to do a little spin on this. So, Kathryn, I think that's definitely a hallmark of Engage in terms of welcome and first impression.
Yeah, so a few events ago, we decided that we needed to make the first-time attendee feel like they aren't the only person there for the first time. And what we did was we do a session 45 minutes before, or an hour before the actual opening session. And we invite past engagees to run this panel. And we try to make it a mix of planners and designers, and someone from the media, and a photographer, and someone from a resort or venue, so that we have the different business elements represented. And so there's usually 8 to 10 people on this panel, and then we invite all of the first-time attendees to the session. And the last couple, what we've done is we've taken that entire group and we've assigned groups, 10 to 15 of them, to one of these Engage ambassadors on the panel. So when these 125, 150 people are in this room together, they realize, okay, I'm not the only one here for the first time. I'm not the only one who doesn't know anyone else. And it gives them a chance to not only bond among each other, but to ask questions of this panel. And we actually don't attend the session. We've struggled with that because we like to manage every aspect of it, but we trust our panelists to say, hey, we're here for you. If you have any questions, let us know. And they give different tips on how to get the most from Engage. And sometimes the tips will contradict contradict each other. But the idea is, the same thing doesn't work for everyone. And one example is we've had someone say, hey, I try to go to all of the after parties and I try to hang in the bar late at night and get to know people. And someone else will say, you know what? I'm not a late night person. So I go to bed. I'll go through the attendee book. I'll highlight people I want to try to meet. And then I'll get up early and I'll get to the breakfast ahead of anyone else, and I try to network using that angle. So when the session is over, they say, okay, I'm Bob Conti. If you were on my list, come up and introduce yourself. So then it even brings it to a smaller group. Bob's your person. If you need anything throughout the event, find Bob. Now this group of 10 has a group together, and then they all come into the opening session and they see that, okay, we're going into the bigger group, but I now know that among this large group, I'm not the only one here for the first time. So it kind of sets everybody up.
Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com. So let's move now into sort of the surprise and delight piece of the first impression, which I know as an attendee of Engage, there is always something that delights you in the beginning. Do you have sort of a formula for how you pace the impressions and the flow?
The interesting thing for us now, having produced 24 Engages in 10 years, is that it's, a challenge and an opportunity for us to constantly relook at the different ways that we surprise and delight. And one of the elements that we have found that is important is to constantly change it up, because as with all conferences, parties, events, there generally is a formula that's followed. And so, whether it's just the cadence of the event, the order of things, what comes next. And so one of the things that Kathryn and I are always working on is changing things up, because the element of literally surprising people by doing something different and not the way we've always done it is in and of itself a major way to make an impression. So it goes down deeper into the level of the things we do for surprise and delight, whether it's entertainment at a breakfast, which is unexpected, or, a gift at a moment where they weren't expecting it, kind of a la the Oprah, you get this, which is always fun. Or in the case, for example, we were just in Canada in Banff Springs, and a lot of it was born out of logistics, which usually things are, but we wanted to have everyone get the chance to do an experience and an activity together for bonding and networking and just to kind of get everyone out of the ballroom. But the reality was the only way we could take everyone up on the gondola to the top of Sulphur Mountain in Banff was before it opened to the public. So that meant that we had to take everyone up very early in the morning, which was a little bit of a risk for us because our group does tend to party very late at night. So we kind of flipped the script. We did not tell people in advance, and we announced it from the stage the afternoon before and said, we're going to change up the way tomorrow's going to work. And people really didn't have any idea, but they were thrilled with it. And I think there was the element of just surprise to announce that things were going to be different, the excitement about doing something that was a exciting and thrilling, one-of-a-kind experience. And then the next day, it really changed the entire feeling of the general session day, which generally tends to have a similar feel to it no matter where we are, because we changed things up and we had breakfast in the morning, we sent everybody up on the mountain, and so instead of doing the afternoon, quote, activity, we changed it and did it first thing in the morning and then pushed the start of the sessions until 10:30, which absolutely changed the way people interacted with each other, the way they felt. So it was a great lesson for us and something we will continue to do, which is to, yes, we have to work within a certain formula of the way things work, but to really push ourselves to say, how can we surprise and delight, in different ways that don't just relate to giving people something.
But how do you balance the risk of change with the reward of being different? I mean, because people, when they get comfortable, it's hard to change.
I think we're always actually thinking through every step. We spend a lot of time talking. I know that sounds, obvious and kind of crazy at the same time, but we talk through every aspect of the event, and we are questioning the different aspects to it, and we walk through it in our minds. We walk through it together, and we just, I think the good thing for Banff was when people registered, and even people who didn't attend the event, when we announced that we were going to the Fairmont Banff Springs, so many people wrote, "Oh my gosh, that's on my bucket list, my bucket list, my bucket list." And we thought, we have to get people out of the ballroom. We have to give them a chance to experience it. So before we actually landed on everyone going up in the morning, we probably went through, I would say, 12 to 15 different scenarios of how can we get people out so that they can experience it. And, there were a few people who said, I'm really afraid of heights. So, that was kind of disappointing. We felt like for some people, because we thought, gosh, they're not going to be able to experience it, but we encouraged them to go up to where the buses took them, and we said, you don't have to get in the gondola, but just go up to where the gondola takes off, so you can see that aspect of it. You're still safe. You're in an enclosed area. There was a Starbucks. There was a gift shop. So they took that advice. So they were still a part of getting the fun breakfast in the cute bag, and so they still had the networking opportunity.
The lesson is to participate as much as you can, but you don't have to do the whole thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think that's one thing that we are always, we're always trying to find where that balance is, because obviously with Engage, a lot of what we do is very heavily themed. We're party planners planning a party for party planners, and so no pressure for us. But, we're always looking at, okay, how can we do a spin or a variation on a theme? And a lot of that actually comes back to sometimes, attire suggestions. And we are always looking at ways we never want to, I think there's that balance in impressions and making people feeling comfortable. Sometimes you want to push people to feel slightly uncomfortable. You never want to push someone to feel so uncomfortable that they are, they can't even enjoy it, and they've got a tremendous amount of anxiety. So we try to look at the spectrum of things that are mildly uncomfortable, but I think in some of that discomfort comes a natural opportunity to bond with other people that may be feeling that same discomfort. So a great example of that is when we're in the Cayman Islands and we took everyone swimming with the stingrays. Some people stayed on the boat. Most people encouraged each other to get off the boat. And, but you had people instantly connecting in their bathing suits, literally jumping on the backs of strangers or hugging them, and they're forever bonded in a different way. So we're always looking at, are there ways, whether it's in the moment of a coffee break or in the moment of an activity that's a little more extreme like that, but how do we connect people? Because obviously at the heart of what we do and what all of us do as event planners is connect people, because we're all somewhat connected, of course, on social media and across, the internet and all of those things. But for us in a live experience, it's about how are there different ways that we can get people to connect with people that they know and connect deeper and connect with new people, strangers, in a really short period of time that makes an impression that is strong and lasting.
And when you say lasting, actually, it seems to me that your social media relationship becomes stronger when you meet in person and have a bonding experience.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like you're building, the cadre of fandom between the people with the mixture and the combination of both digital and face-to-face, which is part of the magic I think you guys have.
We try.
Right. One other dynamic that I'm noticing as I speak to you is for other conference managers or other people that are planning events, your relationship is equal. And the fact is, if you're in a hierarchical planning system where one person is saying, oh, this is the way it's going to be, do you think that it's a detriment to the event because you guys have equal power to make decisions and you veto each other without any rank? But there's a lot of other hierarchical event people that there's a boss. Do you think it's better the way you've got it? Or do you think that you need somebody that's in charge to make a final decision?
Well, I think we would absolutely both say that it's better this way. I think,
absolutely.
But
is it a model? Is it a model that for events that they are? I'm hearing when you're talking to each other that it is actually better when you're partnering as opposed to a hierarchical boss.
I think it's always better that way, don't you, Kath?
Yeah, I think we've been friends for a really long time, and we became friends working on an event. This is going to age us, but way back in 1996, and it was so neat to see back then the differences in what our strengths are and our weaknesses, and where one is weak, the other one is a little bit stronger, and vice versa. And sometimes we surprise each other and come up with ideas that the other one didn't think of. And like I said, we're constantly talking through different ideas. We're fortunate that we live close to each other and we can get together at, walk in the evening or sit in the office, or we travel, and we're just constantly bouncing ideas off of each other. And of course we work with a great team and bounce ideas off of them as well. So it's, people say yin and yang, and we really are that. I think it's a good balance, but I think we also can be creative in different ways with each other and respect each other, and we have a lot of fun. We're friends, and we have a lot of fun at the end of the day.
First impressions matter at special events. From opening a beautiful invitation to a fast and friendly check-in at the door, everything your guests experience makes a difference. Skipster is the event software that is built for creating first impressions that last. Visit their website at zkipster.com to try it out. That's zkipster, Skipster, to try it out. Let me move to another area of an impression. And one of the things I've noticed from your events is that you've got brand and sort of an event color palettes, and you have very, very highly toned look and feels to your events. How planned is that? I mean, are you sitting down first? This is going to be the color palette. This is going to be what people are going to wear. This is going to be the look and feel. Is it that organized? Is it that well thought out? For real?
It's very thought out. And, every event since the very first event we did, which was green and black, lime green and black, back in, 2008. But every event, the color palette, literally, people's first question in many cases are, what's the color palette for this event? So we sort of made that a hallmark. We didn't set out to do that when we first started, but we had one, and then we changed it for the next one, and then it just kept building. But for us, creating a color palette, and over the years, it used to be 2 colors. Over the years, it's really expanded. This last event, it's expanded from a color palette to a full-blown style guide. In our last event in Canada, we now bring on a creative director for each event. We bring on a guest creative director for each event. We're changing it for each one, which gives us a fresh take. And then what's helpful with that, and we've evolved to that, is that then creatively there is a creative director who's, really, because of the way we produce Engage, which is with a different team of creative partners each and every time, depending on where we are, somebody still has to be sort of in charge. So we are always completely inspired and driven by where we are, but sometimes we're someplace for the 5th time. For example, we've been to the Cayman Islands 5 times. So the challenge is, which a lot of event planners have. This is not the first time it's easy to be inspired the first time you go somewhere. We find that always as the easiest inspiration because you've never done it before. Where it's more challenging is, for example, when we go to the Breakers three times. We've done 3 events there. The 3rd time was more challenging, but in many cases I think was the absolute best event we did at the Breakers because we really pushed ourselves, all of us, to creatively be inspired in a different way from a place that we'd been doing it multiple times.
But it always
starts with the colors.
But the example, the things, this is, my feeling is the whole industry is kind of morphing together. So we're taking this color palette system from the wedding world, putting it into the conference world. And the question I have is, does it make a big difference to the attendee to have this kind of uniformity of design? Because most conference planners are not going to think in that detail, but maybe they should be because it has such a dramatic impact. That's the lesson that we're trying to sort of spread to the industry in general here. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think, you said uniformity, and I think when you say that word, in a way, that's almost, to me, a negative word. Mm-hmm. I think no matter where you go, you visually want to feel good about any room you walk into. And I think, you don't have to go too crazy with things like linen, but just different touches of linen with your registration table or those different rooms can really just add a little bit of an enhancement and make you feel good. And why shouldn't people in the conference industry feel like they went a couple of extra steps to make it feel lovely and warm and welcoming, as opposed to just the stark white linen or the black linen that most hotels have? It's just a little extra touch. And even with different things like name tags, this last time we incorporated the color palette into our name tags, and part of that was to differentiate how many times people had been to the event, but it also went with the color theme, and it was just an added extra touch as opposed to the clear slip that the piece of paper went into. So just different touches, I think, make people feel good. All of our signage is, again, the color palette is incorporated, and the fonts are a little bit different and creative. So I think just people, that little bit of an extra spin on how they can just step it up a little bit differently makes the attendee feel like you put a little bit more thought into their attendance and what they're there for.
But does the thought, I guess the ROI, if you look at it from an ROI perspective, by doing all of these touches, it creates sort of that home, it brings that Maya Angelou quote to life, which means that,
right,
if you feel, it's how they feel. You've said that numerous times. It makes you feel
right,
better. It makes you feel. And feelings then actually have an ROI because it impacts your renewal rate and it impacts next year's event.
Right.
And so the lesson to the event organizers that are listening who are in the conference business, that this stuff does matter and you
right,
can kind of prove it with attendance. Am I smoking bad crack here or no?
No, no, it is. It is all about, and as Kathryn said, we know that we are very fortunate in that with Engage, because we are showcasing, event industry trends and things like that instead of talking about them, we are very fortunate because of the teams of people that we work with that are helping us produce the event, that we are able to bring, touch points and that are stepped up across every level. But when we meet with our hotel partners for the very first time, one of the things that's really exciting for us is how much the eyes of the chefs light up when they are able to, and the food and beverage directors and some of the banquet captains, when we say, we want to work with you as a team on this. How can we make this coffee break in this 15 or 20 minutes really have a point of view? And I think for us, having a point of view for everything we do is very important. And we constantly will check in with each other and say, you know what, I feel like all of this, I know the welcome party is going to be great. It's this theme and, whatever. But what's the point of view of the afternoon coffee break on the third day? It doesn't really have a theme, and color is not enough, the fact that it's orange and white or whatever. So we really challenge everyone who's working on the event, whether they're coming to it bringing entertainment or linen or, food and beverage or anything. What is the point of view, and how can we kind of take it one step further to make it something that make people excited, give them the surprise and delight, have it be something they want to take a picture of, obviously, they want to share. That's a big piece for anybody in the live event business, is you want your attendees to talk. You want them to be proud to be somewhere, excited, feel like they're part of something special. So they'll go back, they'll tell people they know, you have to, oh my gosh, you should have seen, even in Banff, it was the mousse cake pops. It was the smallest things. It doesn't have to be something that's super elaborate, but I think it's thinking through every possible touch point and checking yourself and saying, you know what, I think we could do a little bit better here instead of just the standard break or picking something off the menu, kind of finding a way for it to have a stronger point of view and have a little more of a creative spin to give people something to talk about.
So the last substantive question I want to ask you is, you guys grew up with Disney. You've now been doing this for years. What would you go back and tell Disney how to improve what they do from what you've learned?
Oh my God.
It's kind of a tough question, but I mean, you guys have been real world experimenters. You've run a real world lab. Is it something that's something that you would give advice to them now? And what would it be? It's a tough question.
I think the biggest, where we've been so fortunate to travel all over the world and work with amazing event professionals, and I think, and I know Kathryn will have something to weigh in as well, but what strikes to mind is Disney and so many companies are so big that they really, really do not necessarily always empower the people who are on the front lines to be creative and to kind of think out of the box, because it has to go up the chain of command. And I think one of the challenges that we had as, time went on is there's a lot of, it won't work because of that. It's just, a lot of it is just by nature of how big an organization is. And so I think for us, one of the exciting things for us over the last 15 years has been able to been able to do things without a lot of those chains that come with. So I would just say, how can people that are in large organizations maybe, loosen up some of the things that have, that hold people back from being creative and open just by nature of a large company. I mean, I think that's something that does really stifle creativity, even in a really creative company like Disney. It's just the sheer, politics of it and size. I don't know, Kath, if you have a thought.
Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree 100%. And we're also fortunate that we live right here by it, so we are still inspired by it, and we still, a lot of the things we do, we still go back and attribute to the days that we were there. So, and we're very fortunate for all of the creativity that we learned while we were there. And when we look back on the times we were with the different teams we were on, we do remember that we did get to sit around and talk and come up with different ideas. So hopefully, they're continuing to do that, is listen to the different people that are in the different areas of the organization and continue to, it's very collaborative, and hopefully it's still like that today.
So to continue on with our sort of theme of first impressions, I want to throw out a few words, and I want to see how you guys react to them. And first, let's start with Kathryn. And I want to bring up the one word, and both of you can react, but let's start with Kathryn. When I say the word wedding, what comes to mind?
Happy.
Okay. Rebecca?
I think connecting, just connecting all kinds of people in really, really the deepest way possible.
So when I say the word event planning, Kathryn, what comes to mind when you hear that word? What's the first thing that pops into your head?
Creative.
Rebecca?
And that's so interesting, Kath, because I thought logistics.
And I did think, and I'm like, that's what they're going to expect me to say is logistics. That's funny.
I think Todd Fisk has said crazy.
It's funny because, I mean, Kathryn is literally a logistics queen in terms of, I mean, she lives, breathes, eats, and dies them. So it's just funny that we kind of, it's funny to us that we flipped the script on that.
Right.
I'm
thinking you have to be creative, logistically creative. How about that?
Very good. Well, Jess Gordon and I just had a conversation on a last podcast, and we went through this game, and then we realized that even that the first impression is always not the most important one. That when you answer these words, it's digging behind that. So you know what comes out first, and then finding out what's deeper. And that's what she finds when she talks to her clients. That's where the gold is. It's not what they first say, but it's interesting what people first say. If I said the word, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Rebecca's really good at always saying, let's peel back the onion. Let's peel back the onion. So I feel like with everything, we're always like, well, let's keep peeling the onion. Let's keep going deeper.
Oh, good.
I like when she uses that.
Okay, so when I say, I've been using the geography of where you are. When I say the word Orlando, what comes to mind? Kathryn?
Well, I would say right now, hot.
Hot. That's fair. Rebecca?
And obviously, well, it's home for us, but I think it's Disney. Because we spent many years there, and our husbands still work there, so we live right in the shadow. We live in Celebration, just literally a mile from the gate of the Magic Kingdom. So I guess really another word would be magic. It's a magic place.
Right. Okay, so let's start with Kathryn. I want you to respond to when people say your name. What is the first impression you think that they have of you?
When they say Kathryn?
Yeah, when they come and say, what is their first impression of you? What do you think it is? And what would you like it to? What do you think it should be?
Oh, I hope it's welcoming. I mean, and I hope that's with not only attendees but my friends and family. I feel like when people meet me, they feel like I'm open and welcoming, and I'm a hugger. Like when I first meet anybody, I like to hug somebody instead of shake their hand. That freaks people out, but
yeah, but that's good. I mean, it's actually the way we started this podcast was about welcoming, so that fits. Rebecca, what would be that word about you that you would think about yourself? Excited. Oh, excited. Okay, that's really interesting.
I'm always excited, and I always I get excited. I think pretty easily, and I think people that know me, they'll say, "Oh, you're not excited about that idea, so we better go back." Because if I'm not excited, then it's. But I also feel like I'm pretty easy to excite, and I love being excited. And I feel like life is, you always have to have something to look forward to and something to be excited about, and so. I'm kind of constantly striving for that, and I think hopefully people that have spent time with me or meet me know that I sort of operate on an ongoing level of excitement on one in the spectrum.
That's right. Interesting for me, the way I look at this is that these kind of questions promotes the intimacy, and then that's kind of part of the magic of a relationship. And then getting to know people on a little deeper level. So that's why I like asking these questions and seeing people's journey from a first impression to a lasting impression, which is what part of this exercise is about today a little bit. So with that, how do people come to the next event, the next Engage? And I think there's a couple of them. I think I'm coming to the one in Mexico, actually.
Yes,
so tell us the next couple of ones.
We have limited spots remaining for our event in Ireland, which is is October 22nd to 25th for that event. So we're not quite at a waiting list, but we're heading that way relatively soon. And then we still have spots available for Cabo San Lucas for the new Solaz Los Cabos, December 3rd through 6th, which we are really excited about.
I'm really excited about attending that one and speaking at that one as well. So
yes, we're thrilled to have you, David.
I'm totally looking forward to it. I love going to Engage, and I get a lot out of talking to you guys actually on understanding the theory of how you create these ecosystems and these worlds within worlds. And so with that, I thank you for joining us today, and we'll continue this conversation on an ongoing basis for a long time. Thanks so much.
David, we're back in our podcast studio. If we're talking about a conference, the first impression might be the event website, and it might be a customer service interaction. It's not necessarily tied to the event design or the first time a guest enters a venue. And I thought that was a really valuable insight.
In fact, they use this gifting technique. So you always get a kit in advance of the actual event to set the stage for the event on your desk, in your office, and then you're so sort of excited about it that you share it with everyone in your office. So everyone feels the excitement about the event.
Right, and it's setting a tone even before you get there. Another note is how easy it is to be inspired by new locations and destinations and venues that you've never been to before. But you have to push harder if you're familiar with that destination or you're returning to a venue. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are nodding in agreement. That's where the creativity comes in. That's where you push yourself and your venue and your vendor partners. And that's why event designers are pros, right?
Yeah, it's so true that how do you make the same ballroom look completely different, or the same hallway or the same entrance? And that's the idea of these temporary spaces, these temporary places where you're living in a fantasy in a sense. So Beth, what's new at BizBash?
We just wrapped up our last show of the year, BizBash Live New York 2018. It was amazing.
It was amazing, and my feet are still hurting me from it, and I'm recovering.
Well, I think that it's such an important thing for everybody to gather face to face. Obviously, we're big proponents of that. But if you weren't able to join us, you can see what you missed from our education sessions, which included pros from brands like BMW and the National Resource Defense Council and agencies, including Industria Creative, George P. Johnson, Mirrored Media, and more, as well as highlights from the exhibit hall floor. We also announced the winners of the Event Style Awards, so you can find all of that at bizbash.com or see highlights as well on our Instagram at bizbash, or hear some of the words from our speakers on Twitter at bizbash.
It really is the sign of what's going to happen in the next 12 months. So it's really a good place to see and to study as to be a really true event professional. So before we wrap up, we always like to thank the people that help make our podcast possible, just like you like to thank the people that do your events. Dave Nelson, who is our producer, Claire Hoffman, who is our editorial voice, who helps create all of the content that you see on the websites, and Rebecca Pappas, who is in charge of getting our distribution out there and getting it to all of the channels, Stitcher and iTunes and all the various podcasts that you listen on. So thank you very much for listening. And also, if you do feel the urge to want to give us a little comment, please make a comment on whatever podcast platform that you're in. Say if you liked it. Hopefully you will. And what do we say now, Beth?
Gather on.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.
So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you.